Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another video in the series of the 52 essential films and why they matter, all based on the list in this book, which contains a foreword by the late great Robert Osborne, the longtime host of Turner Classic Movies, and myself, my buddy Steven here, and of course the runner of this channel, Dan Skip Allen, have taken the lead on doing individual videos on all of these films. We have a few buddies coming along as well, in Billy Polahan and Mark Tordai. But in this episode, we are talking about one of the most classic, I guess you can say, seminal film noirs of all time, and that is Out of the Past, directed by Jacques Tourneur. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that right. My French is a little rusty, but this is a film starring Robert Mitchum, Kirk Douglas, and Jane Greer, and it is a film from 1947. And when I think film noir, this is one of the films that pop up. It is black and white. It is right smack dab in the middle of the film noir kind of classic era from like 1940 to 1958. And for me personally, Robert Mitchum is one of my favorite actors of all time. I think he's super underrated and doesn't really get a lot of love that a lot of the other actors in the classic era do. But this is a film that I've seen several times, and I know Steven is relatively new to it, so I want to throw it over to him and get his initial reaction to seeing this for the first time.
Well, yeah, thanks to Andrew here. He's introduced me to a lot of classic films, and this is one of the ones that happened to be on the list that I've been very interested in. And yeah, it's definitely I would say in my top film noirs of this time period. And as you said, Robert Mitchum, man, he's got a presence about him that very few actors have, and I would say I would definitely like to see a lot more of his films. He's got this coolness about him. There's just something about him. He's just always cool. And he puts a cigarette in his mouth like nobody else.
Yeah, the one thing I always notice about Robert Mitchum is he has a presence in his movies because he has such a unique, deep voice, and he's also a very tall man, a very like kind of physical, masculine man, and it kind of made sense that he would be the lead in a film noir because it's most film noirs are about masculine men for the most part, and in this film we see him as a private eye, which we see in most film noirs, and of course there is a femme fatale in Jane Greer. And before I go further, I just want to warn people we will be spoiling the heck out of this movie and all of the films we talk about because you can't really delve into these movies without talking about the plot. And this film kind of starts out in an interesting framing in the sense that it starts out in the future, and then there's a lot of flashbacks throughout it, and then we get to the present. It's very interesting how that's done, considering it's 1947 and usually linear plots are the way to go. But this one decides to jump around when it comes to time. And like I said, the Robert Mitchum character is a private detective. He is hired by the Kirk Douglas character, who we're not quite sure what he is, but I think we can assume he's a bit of a gangster or a businessman, but somebody who's more shady. As we see him earlier in the film, he is running a casino, and what we learn is that the Jane Greer character was kind of his girlfriend, perhaps gangster mall, if that's a term we could use, and she is taking a few shots at him with a gun, and she's stolen some money from him, and she's now on the run. And Robert Mitchum's character is hired to track her down and the stolen money, which leads him on kind of a wild goose chase down to Mexico and Acapulco. And Stephen, what did you feel this kind of introduction of this world? Because they do use narrative in this film a lot of narration.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, we know film noir, a lot of one of the kind of trademarks of film noir is that narration. And I think that they use it really well here, where, like you said, they start off the story kind of in, I guess, present day. And then they, you see where our main character is. He's working at a gas station. He's trying to get away from that past life that he had and try to have a normal life. And he's with this girl who he's very much in love with. And then one of his old working buddies comes back to bring him back into life for one last job, as it always is. And it's to, like you said, track down this mistress of sorts, bring her back. Yeah, I mean, I really liked the. I mean, he starts out as this guy who, kind of like he's in love with this girl. You see that soft side of him. You see him, and then when he has a friend who is deaf. And which I really love this character because I almost want to spin off with this deaf kid, and he like grows up and becomes a hitman or something. I'd love to see something like that.
Kind of like his assistant because he runs this gas station, and all you see is him and his young assistant. So you have to assume that that's the only employees because this is like a small town place where there's probably one gas station, one diner. Very small population, so he's really tried to remove himself from this kind of seedy world of, doing jobs for seedy people. But like we've seen in modern movies, once you go in, it's really hard to get fully out. You know what I mean? The famous
kind of reminds me of History of Violence, which comes later. Kind of that, guy that's trying to get away from his past life, gets pulled back in. And yeah, it's a great introduction. Kirk Douglas, when you first meet him, he's so good. And you see his later, him and his son are so alike in their acting style. Michael Douglas learned from his father, obviously, a lot of his great skill from him. And it's just to have such a good actor like that play the villain of this movie, basically, or one of the villains. Is just great. And
one thing about film noir is the line between villain and hero gets blurred a lot. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very grayish world. And this is a young Kirk Douglas. This was long before Spartacus or anything like that. This was only like his third ever role in a feature film. And he is really good. He's kind of very slimy, very, like witty in a way. And also is the character of Robert Mitchum. He has some of the best comebacks in this film I've ever seen. The script in general is really, really good. It's very fast paced. It's very easy to follow in when it comes to dialogue. The dialogue is really, really good. You know what I mean? It's really kind of a throwback almost. It's not quite Howard Hawks type speed when it comes to the banter, but the richness is there. But when the Robert Mitchum character gets to Acapulco, that's when things kind of shift. The movie kind of shifts from this, kind of film noir detective, got to find somebody, got to go on this journey, to a romance in a way, and it shifts. I don't say rather jarringly, but there's definitely a shift when he's sitting in the bar and the Jane Greer character walks in for the first time, the character of Kathy, and immediately he is just like head over heels smitten for this woman, and there seems to be a lot of reciprocation there as well. Stephen, what did you think about kind of the shift? Did you notice it too? Especially when they're on the kind of making out. I mean, it kind of shifts.
Oh yeah, there's a definite shift in tone a little bit. But I don't think it was that bad because, like I said at the beginning of the film, you start off with Mitchum having these moments with this other girl, this other woman, and that really gave me the introduction to what would come later, which is him just love at first sight kind of thing. Seeing this woman, she's so beautiful. Which is kind of a thing that happens a lot in these film noirs. Also, if you go back to another video from another film we did, which is Double Indemnity, or not Double Indemnity, but what am I thinking of? Oh, it's not even on our list. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Laura, which is another great film noir where a guy sees a picture of a girl and falls in love with her.
Yeah, I mean, even in Double Indemnity, it's the same kind of thing. It used to throughout film noir. It's like you're immediately obsessively in love with this woman, or not even with the woman, but the idea of this woman you're obsessed with. As we come to
Well,
find
yeah.
out in this movie, is the woman of Kathy is one of the best femme fatales ever. She brings kind of everyone around her down. And like by down I mean death. Everyone around her ends up dead in this movie,
Well,
including Robert Mitchum.
she's almost like the smartest person in the room in a way. Like she's actually. I mean, the thing is I think the thing it's almost that she has over everybody is she's ruthless. She will
Yes.
kill you. You know, and that's something a lot of the femme fatales don't have, is that they're shady, but they're not as ruthless as this character is.
Yeah, a lot of them some of them what they do is they bring down the downfall of our main character, but it's almost like a self-destruction. But this one is almost like she's doing the destruction purposely. You know, she is manipulating the situation. She's trying to make the situation as best for her as possible, and not really caring about um, the consequences of that. Which leads me to believe to kind of a big question that I find myself asking every time I watch this movie. Does she really care for the Robert Mitchum character? Does she really love him? Because she says it repeatedly, and even at the end of this film, she tries to convince him to come along with her and run away. And is that genuine, or is it just for survival? What do you think,
I
Stephen?
think it's just for. I think it's just for survival. I think she's somebody that wants to just be with the be safe, be and have a good life, and wants things to be her way. She's very selfish. She goes back. We'll get to it. We got to get further into the plot, but she eventually goes back to the Kirk Douglas character just because she didn't have nowhere else to go.
Yeah, that was one of the things when I first saw this movie. I'm like, oh, so that's kind of the person she is. You know what I mean? Going for the best situation possible for self-preservation, which is understandable, but it also is not really good for the character. I mean,
Yeah.
once we have this whole Acapulco situation, the flashback down there is the Robert Mitchum character and Jane Greer. We'll just call he's Jeff Bailey slash Jeff Markham. He
She's
kind of
Cat.
goes under a pseudonym. We'll call him Jeff and Kathy. They migrate from Mexico to San Francisco, where they're kind of living on the run, if you will, trying to hide out, trying to not be caught by the Kirk Douglas character in Wit, because if they get caught, in this lie, they're probably both going to end up dead. There's a good chance that could happen. But they eventually do get caught by one of Wit's henchmen, and he corners them in kind of their little love nest in the woods, if you will, and she ends up killing this person. And it leads me
Yeah.
to believe that she is capable of killing. Like, when she
Yeah.
took shots at the Wit character before, which set up this whole movie, she was trying to kill him. You know what I mean? So this
Yeah.
woman, there's little breadcrumbs spread out of her real ruthless identity, but she still tries to hide it. And she still tries to say, oh, I was doing it just to save you, doing it to protect us. But like we were saying, the self-preservation is definitely there. And that is when we get to present day, and we're really into kind of the middle of the second act. And this is when there's another plot line that is set up where Jeff has to take on yet another job in this film, and this job surrounds the accountant for Wit is blackmailing him, is basically holding these financial documents aside, saying that I will release this to the Treasury Board, saying you didn't pay your taxes correctly, but I want you to pay me $2 million, and we'll just make this go away, and I'll give them to you. So Jeff is now kind of set up once again on a trail, if you will. And I think that this film has multiple plot lines, but I think it's all relatively easy for us to follow up until this point. I know Stephen had some question about this third act plot. And Stephen, what did you find so confusing about it? Because there is a lot of twists.
Well, yeah, it's really just the construction of it. I kind of get everything about, like, he's been brought in, about, it's just a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of different intentions by different people, and just understanding all, it takes a couple times to really get it. But for me, it really works out well. I mean, and it really shows how smart the Mitchum character is. At the end, it's really gratifying just to see him kind of like just see everything coming and just be like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take control of the situation. He's a really, really fun character to watch.
Yeah, I mean, like, basically, for those of you who haven't seen the movie yet, he's trying to be set up to take the fall for the murder of this accountant, and he sees it coming a mile away. He knows that this is what's going to happen. He does certain machinations to kind of save himself. Yet again, self-preservation is something in this. There's a line in this film where he basically says, I think Kathy was kind of in on this kind of framing. He basically says, oh, he'll kill us. And he says, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die last. I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of the mindset of the Robert Mitchum characters. I'm going to do what is best for me. Everybody in this film is trying to do what the best is for them at a certain point. And especially by this point in the film, Robert Mitchum has the instinct now that this woman cannot be trusted. She is just out for herself, or she's working with Whit, which is even worse to him. And he is able to kind of save himself, but once again, the femme fatale swoops in and takes away any hope of self-preservation, and she ends up killing the Whit character, and that destroys any opportunity for Jeff to save himself. And in the end, he went out in not a blaze of glory, just in a blaze of being shot by her, and then kind of being shot by the police.
More of desperation, just like not really knowing what to do next, and kind of just deciding to leave with her, because he didn't really feel like he had anything else better he could do. Except he did have a girl that he loved, apparently, that he could have went back to. And
but even at that point, he knew he had to let her go. Like, he was beyond the point of saving, in the sense that he couldn't live the life he wanted to live anymore in that small town, running that gas station, having the wholesome girl next door be his girlfriend or potential wife later on. That life is completely impossible to have because of his past. Hence the name of the movie, Out of the Past. The idea of the past coming back to haunt you, and ultimately ended up being his demise. It ended up being his death. And what is interesting about film noir is death is always kind of lurking. Like, that is kind of the ultimate finite thing that I think a lot of the protagonists in film noirs are trying to navigate away from, is the lure of death, or kind of the death of life. In a way, like, they can't live their lives the same anymore after these things. Parts of their lives have to die, and sometimes it's quite literal, and which is kind of a shame, because I always want him to get away in the end. Every time I watch a movie where I know the protagonist is going to die, I always like, man, if there's one little thing you could have done here, gone down a different path, or done this or done that. But in the end, he felt he was left with no other option. And it's an interesting film from that perspective, and I think it's an essential film because, like I said, it's a great film noir, not only for this film noirish plot, which is twisty and turny, and each character has different motivations, despite the fact that we only see the world through Jeff's perspective. We learn that there's a lot of other things happening around him. But the film technically, I think, is also really good. It's in black and white. There's a lot of shadow. There's a lot of darkness. Even in the light scenes, the scenes that happen during the day, which there aren't very many, the film tends to get darker as it goes along. What do you think, Stephen, about the technical aspect of it? Because there's so much in it, film noir.
Yeah, I was going to say, going into like why I think it's essential, a lot of that is just, I think that if you want a pure example of what the film noir genre is. This is one of them pure examples because everything about it technically just stands out. Well, you know, the framing and everything like that. There were some shots in this film that were just framed so perfectly, and just the and the cinematography, the shadows, the darkness. You know, and the character development of the, you know, how these characters act and how they carry themselves are just pure examples of the genre. And you know, it's one of the and the script is one of the smartest scripts of film noir films. You know, some of the film noirs are a lot more you know, straightforward. They're a lot, you know, I'm not saying this is a hard movie to follow, but it is a little bit more it does have a little bit more intelligence, I think, than some of the other ones. Are not so straightforward. The story is not so just laid out in front of you. It makes you think a little bit, you know, especially in the third act, about how things go down. And it's just well-crafted movie. It's one of the movies that probably gets taught in schools, you know, and it needs to be. I'm
assuming that, yeah, it's on most people's favorite noir list somewhere. It's also, like we commented on how the acting is so good. Really great script, like we've all said. It's a film I always recommend to people when they say, oh, I want to watch a good film noir. What's film noir? How can I delve into it? Like Steven asked me, you know, what's a great film noir? And I was like, Double Indemnity, Out of the Past, Laura. These are all quintessential films. In a Lonely Place is another one. And I have always liked this movie, and it took me years to actually watch it. I had watched all the other ones first, and then I kind of saved one of the best for last, kind of as a reward, if you will. But like we've mentioned in other reviews of film noir really doesn't have a set definition. It can be so many different things. It can be black and white. It can be color. It can involve a private eye or a femme fatale or not. It's so wide open. It really all depends on perspective. And Jacques Tourneur is is a director who didn't really make a lot of film noirs, which makes this film kind of unique. He's someone who made the film Cat People, which came out much earlier than this film. And it's another film that's kind of dark and brooding and with a lot of great thematic work, which is kind of what this film really is. This film is really, you know, dark and brooding and has a lot of great themes. But just to wrap it up here, Steven, do you have any last words about this film? I know I'm almost all talked out.
Well, yeah, just you know, definitely try to check this out, guys. I mean, I'm a big fan of the film noir genre. If you are, just please check this out. Check out some Robert. I'm gonna definitely check out more Robert Mitchum stuff because he really is a very fine actor. And Kirk Douglas, definitely check out more of his stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think we've said a lot of all we needed to say, and just keep watching out. We got a lot more of these videos we're going to make. We got some other film noirs that we still haven't done yet, so watch out for that.
For those of you curious about Robert Mitchum, check out his IMDb page. He was in a film called Night of the Hunter, which is one of my favorites of all time. Watch that film. It's not quite film noir, but it is dark. For those of you interested in watching this film here, Out of the Past, it is available on Blu-ray through Warner Archive. You can buy this on Amazon. You can buy this directly from WarnerArchive.com. But it is a gorgeous-looking Blu-ray. Definitely check it out. Unfortunately, not a lot of special features, so we kind of have to delve into this stuff on our own. There is a commentary, though. There is a commentary. But for us here on the Best Damn Movie Show channel that's run by Dan Skip Allen. This is another episode in the film series 52 Essential Films and Why They Matter, all from this book here. Get this book if you want to, or definitely check out this list because it's definitely a unique list, and we have plenty more episodes of this series to come. So for me, I am Andrew. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Cabzilla Productions, as well as on Twitter at Cabzilla06. Steven?
I'm Steven Billings. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff. Film Club Central, we do a lot of shows. Film Club Movie Show, we do rapid reaction, stuff like that.
Cool, very cool. So for all of us here on the Best Damn Movie Show, definitely subscribe to here. Subscribe to our buddy Dan Skip Allen, our fearless leader. Until next time, bye.